It was supposed to be a happy birthday evening, a warm moment where a pregnant wife still believed her life was whole. But when her husband suddenly dropped to one knee in the middle of a crowded restaurant and offered a ring to his mistress, the entire room fell silent. The shock hit her so hard she fell backward onto the cold tile floor as dozens of phones lifted to record every cruel second. Yet what followed after that fall was not just pain. It was the beginning of a storm of betrayal, a fire of dignity rising, and a comeback that left everyone speechless. And trust me, you will not see the ending coming until we walk through this story together. Tell us what time you are watching and where you are tuning in from. Leave a comment below. We would love to hear from you. The evening sky over Denver carried a soft spring chill as Maya Thompson stepped out of the cab and stood in front of the upscale restaurant near the center of the city. The soft white lights glowing around the entrance cast a gentle shimmer across the glass walls. Through them, she could see shapes of guests, dressed elegantly, waiters gliding between tables, and the faint movement of a live jazz trio at the back of the room. Maya took a slow breath and placed one hand on her belly, feeling the reassuring weight of her 7-month pregnancy. Her husband had told her that he planned something special for her birthday, something he described as meaningful and unforgettable. She had believed him. She wanted to believe him. Tonight, she hoped the distance between them would fade and that he would stand beside her proudly as the father of their soon-to-be-born child. She walked into the restaurant with a small smile. The hostess greeted her with warm politeness, then guided her toward the main hall. As Maya entered the brightly lit room, applause rose from various corners. Dozens of faces turned toward her. Friends, colleagues, acquaintances, and clients of her husband. She felt a flicker of hope spark in her chest. Maybe this really was a celebration of her. Maybe Jason finally remembered who he was married to. She nodded politely as people approached with friendly greetings, then made her way to the front, where her husband stood on a small raised stage. Jason Hale stood tall under the soft white spotlight. His tailored suit fit perfectly across his broad shoulders, and his posture radiated confidence. He looked every bit the successful businessman Denver magazines liked to feature. Maya settled into a seat near the stage, her hand resting gently on her belly as if to share the moment with the baby. She imagined he would thank her for being strong through the pregnancy. She imagined he would announce something sweet or sentimental. Perhaps he would tell everyone that he wanted to be a better husband and father. The thought warmed her and softened the ache she had carried for months. Around her, guests gathered in small clusters. Some whispered with excitement, others lifted their phones, expecting a speech or a surprise tribute. Maya straightened her posture and waited. Jason lifted the microphone with a smile that looked rehearsed, but she chose not to question it. Not tonight, not on her birthday. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jason said, projecting his voice across the hall. "Tonight is the most important night of my life." Maya felt her heart flutter with anticipation. The jazz music faded. The restaurant fell into a gentle hush. She smiled up at him, imagining he was finally about to acknowledge her. He looked down for a moment, then took a slow breath. She prepared herself for the words she desperately wanted to hear. But Jason did not look at her. Instead, he turned to the right side of the stage and extended his hand toward someone waiting just outside the glow of the spotlight. A young woman stepped forward. She was dressed in a fitted white dress that sparkled beneath the lights. Her blonde hair cascaded over her shoulders in soft waves. Maya recognized her immediately. Brooke Sanders, Jason's personal assistant, ambitious, polished, always standing too close to him during meetings, always answering his phone before Maya could. Brooke stepped into the light with a shy smile that felt practiced. The guests murmured. Maya's breath caught. She waited for Jason to step aside, to explain, to bring the moment back to what it was meant to be. Instead, she watched in disbelief as Jason slowly lowered himself onto one knee in front of Brooke. Her heart stopped. For a few seconds, she could not hear the room at all. Only the pounding inside her chest. Her eyes widened. She stood so fast, her chair scraped against the floor. The entire room froze. Jason did not turn toward her. He continued speaking, but she could no longer process the words. Something about destiny, something about true love. something about a future he could not wait to start. He held up a small velvet box. Inside it, a diamond ring caught the light and flashed brilliantly. Brooke placed a trembling hand over her heart, as if overwhelmed. She extended her fingers toward Jason, and he slid the ring onto her hand. Cameras flashed. A few guests clapped, uncertain and confused. Maya felt her knees weaken. Time slowed. It felt as if the restaurant had tilted off its foundation. She took a small step backward. Her heel tapped the polished floor, slipped slightly on the glossy surface, and in that split second, she lost her balance. Her body tilted backward. She reached out for the edge of the table, but her hand brushed only air. With a sharp gasp, she fell completely onto her back. A loud thud cracked through the silence. The pain struck immediately, a deep ache spreading from her spine to her abdomen. Her hands instinctively wrapped around her belly. A few startled guests rushed forward, but Jason barely gave her a glance. He tightened his arm around Brooke's waist, as if afraid the moment would lose its shine. The humiliation stabbed deeper than the physical pain. Maya pressed her palm to the floor and pushed herself up slowly while clutching the edge of the nearest chair. Tears filled her eyes, but none of them spilled. Not one. She refused to break in front of them. She rose to her feet with trembling legs. Her breathing was sharp, her chest tight with betrayal and disbelief. Brooke giggled nervously and leaned into Jason's side. Jason tried to smile for the crowd again. That was the final blow. Something inside Maya snapped with a loud clarity. She straightened her shoulders, wiped her face with the back of her hand, and stepped forward. People parted without a word. Maya marched directly toward Jason and Brooke. The shock on a few faces turned into horror as they saw the fierce determination in her expression. Without hesitation and without a single word, Maya pushed both of them with the full force of the adrenaline crashing through her body. Jason stumbled backward, crashing into Brooke, and together they stumbled through the open doorway of the restaurant. Gasps erupted from every corner of the room. For a moment, the entire restaurant stood frozen. Maya stood upright, her chest rising and falling as she steadied herself. The pain in her back throbbed, but she did not flinch. She looked out the open door where Jason and Brooke sprawled in stunned silence. On her birthday, in front of a city full of people who thought they knew who she was, Maya discovered something new inside herself. She was no longer the quiet woman who waited for her husband to remember her. She was someone who could stand, someone who could act, someone who refused to be erased. And as the shock settled into the room, Maya remained still, her hand resting protectively on her belly, knowing that nothing in her life would ever be the same again. The cold night air hit Maya the moment she stepped through the restaurant doorway. Denver's temperature had dropped sharply, settling near 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The wind pushed against her like an invisible wall, stinging her skin and cutting through the thin fabric of her dress. She wrapped her arms around her belly, trying to shield the tiny life inside from the chill. Her breath shook as it left her lips, forming faint wisps of vapor in the air. The ache in her lower back pulsed harder with every second, a reminder of the fall she had suffered only minutes before. Behind her, the restaurant doors burst open. Jason stormed out, his polished shoes striking the pavement with force. His face was twisted with anger, not concern, not fear. Not a single trace of worry for the pregnant woman standing before him. "What is wrong with you?" he snapped. His voice echoed across the nearly empty sidewalk. "You are making a fool out of yourself in front of everyone." The words sliced into her. She swallowed the rising lump in her throat. She wanted to scream. She wanted to break down and demand answers. But instead, she held the swell of her stomach protectively, trying to steady both her heart and her breathing. She refused to let chaos swallow her again. Brooke appeared at Jason's side, wrapping her hands around his arm like she was the victim. She trembled just enough to look delicate, just enough to draw attention. When her eyes landed on Maya, she widened them as if she were frightened or deeply offended. "I am not safe around her," Brooke whispered, pretending to cling to Jason for support. Jason pulled her closer, his posture stiffening. He did not spare a moment to look at Maya's flushed face or trembling hands. All he saw was the scene he thought she had created, not the heartbreak she had endured. Maya felt her throat tighten, but she forced herself to breathe evenly. She could not afford to panic. She needed to protect her baby. She pressed her palm more firmly against her stomach. The movement grounded her, pulling her away from the emotional wreckage and into the physical world where her child depended on her strength. From the doorway came hurried footsteps. A woman in her 60s, dressed in a simple burgundy coat, rushed toward Maya. She looked like one of the guests, someone who had watched the disaster unfold from inside. Her face was soft with concern. She reached out instinctively to help Maya stand taller. "Dear, come back inside," the woman urged gently. "You need to sit. You need warmth." Maya shook her head. "Thank you, but I am fine. I just need a moment." Her voice was thin but steady. She did not want anyone to witness more humiliation. She did not want Jason to see her collapse again. She would keep her dignity, even if it cost her every ounce of strength. Jason scoffed loudly. "There is nothing more to talk about. Our marriage was done long before tonight." Maya slowly turned her head toward him. Her voice trembled, but not with fear. "And the baby?" she asked. "What about your child?" Jason's expression hardened. "You will not keep custody if you try to fight me. I can promise you that." His tone carried absolute certainty, the kind only a wealthy man accustomed to winning could possess. Brooke smirked at Maya, unable to hide her satisfaction. Her smile was cold and confident, as if she already believed the future belonged to her. The sight threatened to break something deep inside Maya, but she forced herself to remain upright. A sudden pain surged across her abdomen. The intense pressure forced her to bend slightly, her hand tightening on the fabric of her dress as she gasped. Her vision blurred for a moment. Panic flickered, but she smothered it quickly for the sake of the baby. She tried to inhale slowly, then exhale through her nose. Jason's voice cut through the dark. "Stop acting. This performance is embarrassing." The cruelty of his words made her go still. She looked up at him with disbelief, searching his face for even one fragment of the man she had married. But there was nothing. No warmth, no guilt, only frustration that she had interrupted his celebration. Someone else joined them. A middle-aged man, still wearing a name badge from the event, hurried up the stairs toward Maya. He had hovered near the bar earlier, and she remembered someone mentioning he was a doctor attending as a guest. He kneeled slightly to be at her eye level. "Ma'am, that fall you took earlier was serious. You need medical attention. Please let someone drive you to the hospital." Maya swallowed hard. She knew he was right. She could feel the pain tightening across her stomach like a warning. But she also knew she could not accept help from anyone connected to Jason. Not tonight. Not after everything. "I will go myself," she said, steadying her breathing. "I can handle it." She lifted her chin and forced herself to straighten her back. A wave of determination washed over her. Her fear drained, replaced by something sharper and stronger. Her eyes locked with Jason's, and he seemed almost startled by the sudden clarity in her expression. Without another word, she turned away from him. She placed both hands on her belly and took slow, deliberate steps toward the parking area. The cold air swirled around her, but she kept moving. Behind her, Jason muttered something under his breath. "She just wants attention. She is ruining my engagement." Brooke tightened her grip on his arm again. "Let her go. She is doing this to herself. We do not owe her anything." Maya reached her car. Her hands shook so badly she could barely hold the keys. Tears fell silently down her cheeks, not from sadness anymore, but from exhaustion and determination colliding inside her. She tried again, and finally the door unlocked. A young waiter appeared beside her. He must have followed her outside, perhaps unable to bear the sight of a pregnant woman struggling alone. He opened the car door for her and steadied her elbow as she lowered herself into the seat. "You do not deserve any of this," he said softly. "Not even for a second." The kindness struck her harder than Jason's cruelty. Maya wiped her eyes, nodded gratefully, and pulled the door shut. The engine hummed quietly as she started the car. She adjusted her seatbelt around her stomach, inhaled shakily, and focused her blurry gaze on the dark road ahead. With a trembling hand, she shifted the gear and pulled away from the curb. The restaurant lights faded behind her as she drove into the cold Denver night. Her heart pounded, but something inside her had awakened. Something fierce, something determined to survive. Tonight, her journey of survival and rebirth had begun. Morning sunlight filtered through the thin white curtains of the hospital room, casting a pale glow across the bed where Maya lay resting. Her eyelids felt heavy and swollen, her body drained from the shock and the relentless tension of the night before. She shifted slightly and winced at the soreness still lingering in her back and abdomen. The monitors around her beeped softly, marking a steady but cautious rhythm. She blinked slowly, lifting her phone with trembling fingers. The first thing she saw was a headline on the Denver Morning Press. Bold letters stretched across the screen with a bright photograph of Jason on one knee in front of Brooke. The caption read, "Denver businessman Jason Hale proposes to his assistant at extravagant birthday event." Maya stared at it for several seconds. Her breath thinned, her chest tightened, her eyes burned. She scrolled down, searching for a single mention of herself, a single acknowledgement that she was even present, that she was the pregnant wife left standing behind. But nothing appeared. Not one line. Not one word. It was as if she had been erased from the night entirely. A tear rolled down her cheek. She brushed it away quickly. Her vision blurred again when she reached the end of the article. The comments were worse. People praising the couple. People calling the scene romantic. People calling Brooke beautiful and deserving. The silence around Maya felt almost crushing. A gentle knock broke through the air. The gray-haired doctor from the night shift stepped inside with a quiet clipboard and a warm expression. He approached her bedside and spoke softly. "You had a very stressful night, Miss Thompson. The good news is that you did not go into preterm labor. Your baby is stable, and your vitals look much better this morning." His reassurance brought some relief, though the ache in her heart still throbbed deeply. Maya nodded and murmured a faint thank you. He reminded her to rest, drink water, and avoid emotional strain. The moment he left, she felt the weight of loneliness settle back over her shoulders. She glanced at her phone again. There were no messages from Jason. Not a call, not a question, not even a cold acknowledgement that she was in the hospital. For a moment, she wondered if he even knew where she was. Then she realized he must. Her fall, her pain, her humiliation in front of dozens of people. It was impossible he did not know. Yet still, he stayed away. When she refreshed the news update, another article popped up, posted just 20 minutes earlier. This time, it quoted Brooke directly. The assistant stood surrounded by reporters outside the restaurant, wearing the engagement ring proudly. Her statement read, "Maya and Jason ended things a long time ago. She moved on, and so did he. Last night was simply their moment of closure." Maya felt her stomach twist. She whispered, "That is not true." She had never ended anything. She had never walked away. She had fought desperately for the marriage, for the child, for the man she believed Jason once was. Yet Brooke's lies spread quickly. The story began appearing across social media. People shared it with sympathy toward the new couple. Others posted hateful messages about Maya. Her inbox filled with angry emails calling her jealous or unstable. She lowered the phone to the blanket and closed her eyes, overwhelmed by a wave of grief and betrayal. A city crowded with people suddenly felt like the loneliest place she had ever been. Her breath trembled. She needed someone. Anyone. The thought rose naturally in her heart. She opened her contacts and tapped the number she knew would answer. Her father. The moment he picked up, his voice filled the silence. "Maya. What is wrong? Are you hurt?" The sound of his concern brought her to tears instantly. "Dad," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Can you come, please?" He did not ask for details. He heard her fear and pain in the space between her words. "I am on my way," he said. "I am leaving right now." She imagined him grabbing his coat, locking his small home in Wyoming, and rushing to his truck without hesitating. The kind of loyalty Jason never showed, the kind of love she always trusted. Back in Denver, Jason was already at work, planning the next step of his carefully curated image. He contacted his attorney and demanded the preparation of divorce papers. He wanted them delivered quickly. He wanted a legal split before the media twisted anything further. When the attorney asked about the pregnancy, Jason simply replied that he would pursue full custody. He believed the child should carry the Hale name, not hers. He spoke with absolute entitlement. Brooke encouraged him, pressing gently at his arm and whispering that it was the smartest choice. She insisted that Maya had no place in their future, and that she should not raise a child who belonged to them. Jason agreed without hesitation. His world was centered on control and presentation. The thought of Maya raising their baby enraged him. Back in the hospital room, Maya wiped her eyes and sat up slowly. She knew Jason would retaliate. She knew he would try to twist the story to protect himself. She knew he would try to take everything from her. So she began collecting what she had. She scrolled through old messages, screenshots, and photos she had ignored before. The late-night texts between Jason and Brooke, the discreet lunch reservations, the hotel confirmations, even a voice message where Jason accidentally mumbled her name while speaking to Brooke. She saved everything. Her intuition whispered that Jason would use his money and image to bury the truth. She needed proof. She needed a shield. She needed to protect herself and her child. A nurse stepped into the room with a warm smile, checking Maya's vitals gently. "You should have someone with you today," the nurse said softly. "You have been through a lot. You should not be alone." "My dad is coming," Maya replied. Her voice carried a quiet strength. Saying those words filled her with a small but crucial sense of comfort. Her father represented safety, truth, and stability. The nurse nodded with relief. "Good. You need support right now." As the nurse left, Maya placed her hand on her stomach again. Her baby shifted slightly beneath her palm. It felt like a reminder that she was not alone, that this tiny heartbeat inside her still believed in her, still depended on her. She whispered, "He is coming. Everything will be different soon." But what she did not know was that her father, Samuel Thompson, was bringing something far more powerful than comfort. He was bringing knowledge. He was bringing strength. And he was bringing a truth that would shake everything Jason believed he could hide. The Wyoming morning sky was still dark when Samuel Thompson started the engine of his old truck. The cold wind rushed across the empty land as he pulled out of his driveway, gripping the steering wheel with hands that had fought fires for 25 years. He drove with steady determination, the tires cutting through frost on the long highway stretching toward Colorado. The distance to Denver was nearly 300 miles, but he did not feel the length of it. All he could think about was Maya's trembling voice on the phone the night before. He had never heard her sound so fragile. The wind grew stronger as he crossed state lines, rattling the truck windows. His jacket hung loosely on his shoulders, and the heater took a long time to warm the air. None of it mattered. His eyes stayed fixed on the road. With each mile, memories surfaced. Maya running barefoot through their backyard as a child. Maya scraping her knee and insisting she did not need help. Maya standing up for a friend in school even when she got in trouble for it. She had always been stronger than she realized. But no amount of strength could defend her from a betrayal like the one she had suffered last night. He pressed harder on the gas. Hours passed. The mountains faded behind him and the city skyline began to rise. Traffic thickened as he entered Denver, but he maneuvered through it with practiced patience. When the hospital building finally came into view, his heart pounded with urgency. He parked quickly and hurried across the lot, pushing through the doors of the maternity wing with long, determined strides. Inside, the warm lights contrasted sharply with the cold morning outside. Nurses moved between rooms, and the beeping of monitors filled the hallways. Samuel spotted Maya sitting on the edge of her hospital bed through an open doorway. Her eyes were red and swollen, her shoulders slumped forward, as if the weight of the entire night still pressed down on her. She looked small, smaller than he had ever seen her. "Maya," he called softly. Her head jerked up. The moment she saw him, a sob escaped her. She stood shakily and moved toward him. He crossed the room quickly and wrapped his arms around her before she could fall. She buried her face in his chest, holding fistfuls of his coat as tears ran freely down her cheeks. His arms tightened around her, his jaw clenching with anger at the thought of anyone making his daughter cry like this. "I am here," he murmured, keeping his voice gentle. "You are safe now, I promise." Maya tried to speak but only managed a breathless cry. He held her until the shaking in her shoulders eased. When she finally pulled back, he cupped her face in both hands. Her cheeks were warm and flushed. Her eyes glistened with exhaustion. "Tell me everything," he said. And she did. She told him about the birthday party, the spotlight, the proposal, the fall, the pain, and the humiliation. She told him about Jason's cold words and Brooke's lies. She told him about the newspaper headlines and the hateful messages. Every detail carved a deeper line into Samuel's forehead. His hands curled into fists at his sides. When she finished, he exhaled slowly. No one treats my daughter like that." His voice was low, steady, and frighteningly calm. It was the voice he used on dangerous calls during his firefighting years. A voice that meant action. He looked toward the hallway. "Where is the doctor?" A nurse guided him to the on-duty physician. Samuel listened intently as the doctor explained that Maya had suffered extreme emotional stress and that her blood pressure had fluctuated dangerously during the night. The baby was stable for now, but any more trauma could be harmful. Samuel thanked him, then returned to Maya's side. "I will not let anything happen to you or the baby. I will protect you. Whatever it takes." Maya nodded and wiped her face again. She looked at him with a fragile smile, the first hint of relief she had shown since he arrived. Samuel moved to the small table beside her bed and pulled out his phone. There was one person he needed to call, someone he trusted, someone who would not be intimidated by Jason Hale's money or influence. He dialed the number. "Walt," he said when the line picked up, "I need your help." Sheriff Walt Harris, an old friend and retired colleague from Samuel's firefighting days, listened as Samuel explained the situation. Harris had dealt with his share of powerful men hiding behind clean appearances. He understood corruption and manipulation. When Samuel mentioned Jason's behavior toward employees, Harris hummed thoughtfully. "There have been complaints," Harris admitted. "Nothing official, but enough whispers to raise eyebrows. With God prudence. It is time those whispers get heard," Samuel replied. Harris agreed to assist. He promised to contact the Denver police and request cooperation with an early review of the birthday event. Samuel ended the call and looked at Maya. "It begins now," he said quietly. "We will not let him bury the truth." Before leaving the hospital that afternoon, Samuel went to the security desk and requested the restaurant's contact information. An hour later, he met with the head of security at the restaurant where the birthday party had taken place. The man recognized the situation immediately. Perhaps he had watched the scene from the monitors or heard the staff whispering about it. Whatever the reason, he agreed without hesitation to provide the surveillance footage from the night. Samuel thanked him with a firm handshake. Next, he reached out to guests who had attended the event. Some were reluctant at first, but several had seen enough to feel uneasy. They agreed to give statements if necessary. A few offered sympathy, shaking their heads at the cruelty of what they witnessed. When Samuel returned to the hospital room later, Maya looked up with tear-stained eyes. He placed a small bracelet into her hand. It was simple, with soft blue beads, the kind her mother used to wear. "For strength," he said. "Whenever you feel alone, remember you are not a Vindine." Maya brushed her thumb over the beads and smiled weakly. She whispered, "Thank you, Dad." He helped her sit back against the pillows. As he prepared to leave for a moment to get food, he paused at the doorway and looked back at her with the same steady eyes he had when she was a child. "You deserve to be treated with respect," he said. "You always have." Maya reached toward him and squeezed his hand. For the first time since the nightmare began, she felt a spark of real hope. Not imagined hope, not forced hope, genuine hope. Her father was here, and the fight was just beginning. The small conference room inside the hospital's family wing was quiet except for the soft hum of fluorescent lights. Maya sat with her hands folded over her belly while Samuel stood guard near the window. On the table lay a laptop open to the restaurant security footage that Samuel had retrieved earlier. A volunteer technician from the restaurant's security team had agreed to help them view it. The man pressed play. Maya watched herself on the screen. She saw Jason kneeling in front of Brooke. She saw the ring. She saw the cameras flashing around them. Then she saw her own figure in the background. She was standing with her hands over her mouth, shock visible in every line of her body. She watched herself fall. She watched the moment her back struck the floor. She watched Jason turn away from her without even reaching out a hand. She could not look away, even though the memory already lived inside her chest like a bruise. The technician paused the video and exhaled. "There is no empathy in his reaction," he said quietly. "Anyone who watches this will see it." Samuel nodded, his face stern. What mattered most now was that the truth existed in plain record. Maya leaned back in her chair as her heartbeat calmed. Seeing the event through another lens made her pain feel real in a way that nobody could deny. She was not invisible. She was not hysterical. She was the wronged wife. By noon, the footage had been shared with several trusted individuals. Within hours, a clip leaked on social media. One angle showed Jason kneeling in front of Brooke while Maya stood only a few feet away, holding her pregnant belly. Another angle showed Jason glancing at Maya on the ground with cold indifference before pulling Brooke close. Comments exploded across the internet. Thousands of viewers expressed disbelief that a man could behave that way toward his pregnant wife. Many compared her fall to a violent blow, and people demanded accountability. Older viewers on Facebook reacted even more strongly. Many wrote about the decline in family values and the disrespect shown to motherhood. One comment read, "This young woman deserved love, not betrayal. Men like that have forgotten what loyalty means." Another wrote, "How can anyone celebrate while the mother of his child lies on the floor?" The outrage grew rapidly, spreading from local forums to statewide networks. Before long, news outlets picked up the story. Their headlines shifted. Instead of celebrating Jason's proposal, they focused on the betrayal. One popular site wrote, "Pregnant wife collapses after husband proposes to assistant at birthday party." Reporters requested interviews with Maya, but she was not ready to speak. She still needed time to breathe and gather herself. That afternoon, as the online firestorm intensified, an older attorney knocked on Maya's hospital door. He introduced himself as Benjamin Carter, a pro bono lawyer who had served the community for over 30 years. His gray beard and calm eyes gave him an air of reliability. He sat beside her and opened a notebook. "I saw the video, Miss Thompson," he said gently, "and what happened to you is unacceptable. If you are willing, I can represent you at no cost. You deserve justice, and your child deserves safety." Maya exchanged a brief look with her father. Samuel nodded in encouragement. She turned back to the attorney and said quietly, "Yes, please help me." Benjamin smiled reassuringly. "Good. The first step is filing a claim for emotional harm and reckless endangerment. We will show that Jason caused severe psychological distress during pregnancy. It will not be difficult with what we have." After signing the necessary paperwork, Maya felt a resolve begin to grow inside her. The pain she carried was no longer something she had to hide. It was evidence. It had weight. It had meaning. While Benjamin gathered documents, a different force worked against her. Brooke was in her apartment desperately trying to delete messages from her phone. She scrolled through thread after thread of conversations between her and Jason, removing anything that hinted at an affair. But she worked too slowly, and she did not know that many of the messages had already been backed up automatically. Even the ones she erased were recoverable. Benjamin brought in a digital specialist that same day. He arrived with a laptop and a small scanning device. Within an hour, he recovered Brooke's deleted texts. The logs confirmed months of secret meetings, intimate conversations, and planning. One message from Brooke read, "She will not matter soon." Another said, "Make sure she does not show up tonight." The specialist printed the recovered messages and placed them in a folder labeled Evidence. Samuel watched from a seat near the door. He did not smile. His expression remained hard, carved by both pain and determination. These papers represented the truth he had promised to uncover. Meanwhile, support for Maya spread far beyond Denver. Letters from Wyoming arrived at the hospital. Old family friends sent cards. Neighbors who had known Maya since childhood mailed handwritten notes filled with encouragement and prayers. Many of the messages came from older residents who valued marriage, loyalty, and integrity. They told Maya she was brave for standing up to a man who had used power against her. One group of senior women from her hometown formed a small support circle they called Protect Maya. They held gatherings to write letters, offer community support, and even create small handmade gifts for her unborn child. When Samuel showed her the photos they sent, Maya felt her throat tighten with emotion. Not everyone supported her, however. Jason hired a public relations team to smear her name. Articles suddenly appeared describing Maya as unstable, dramatic, and vindictive. Anonymous comments flooded sites with accusations that she was exaggerating her fall or trying to ruin Jason's reputation out of jealousy. But the public was no longer fooled. The video spoke louder than any PR tactic. Viewers saw her collapse. They saw Jason's indifference. They saw Brooke's satisfaction. The attempt to discredit Maya only convinced more people that Jason was desperate. The pressure took a toll on Jason's business. Investors backed out. Clients withdrew from contracts. A major partnership deal collapsed when executives said they could not risk associating with him. His company's stock value plummeted. Jason blamed Maya publicly. He told colleagues that she was trying to destroy him. But the truth was that he had destroyed himself long before any lawsuit was filed. Soon after, Maya was summoned to a mediation meeting requested by Jason's legal team. When she walked into the conference room, Samuel and Benjamin accompanied her. Jason sat on one side of the table with a polished expression. He expected her to be fragile. He expected her to cry or beg or crumble. But Maya sat tall, her hands calm, her gaze steady. When he spoke, she listened without fear. When he tried to blame her, she remained silent. When he accused her of overreacting, she looked directly at him and said clearly, "I am not afraid of you anymore." Jason's jaw tightened. For the first time, he looked unsure. The mediation ended quickly. Neither side agreed to anything. The air was thick with tension as the attorneys exchanged stiff nods. When Maya stood, Jason watched her with a mixture of shock and confusion. She did not walk like a victim anymore. She walked like someone who had rediscovered her strength. Outside the room, Benjamin closed his folder. "We are done here," he said. "This case is going to court." Maya breathed slowly and touched her stomach. She was ready. The morning of the hearing arrived with a crisp bite in the Colorado air. The courthouse in downtown Denver stood tall against the pale sky, its stone steps already crowded long before the doors opened. Dozens of older residents from the community had gathered with handmade signs. Some read, "Justice for Maya." Others simply said, "Protect mothers." Their presence brought an unexpected warmth to the cold steps. They had come for her. They wanted the court to see that she was not alone. Inside the courtroom, the benches filled faster than any clerk anticipated. The majority of those who squeezed in were seniors from Denver and from nearby towns. The quiet murmurs of their voices created a low hum as they settled into their seats. Maya entered slowly, supported on one side by Samuel and on the other by her attorney. Her steps were careful, her breath steady. She could feel every eye in the room soften when she walked past. Some of the older women even nodded at her as a sign of strength. Samuel guided her to their table and sat down beside her. Without a word, he reached out and held her hand tightly. His grip was warm and firm, a silent reassurance that she was safe, that he would never leave her alone in this room. She squeezed his fingers in return, grateful for his steady presence. The quiet shifted as Jason strode into the courtroom. His polished black shoes clicked sharply against the floor. He wore an expensive charcoal vest that looked freshly tailored, and he carried himself with the confidence of a man who believed he could still win. He adjusted the cuffs of his sleeves as he walked, glancing briefly at the crowd as if they were beneath him. Brooke followed closely behind him, dressed in a glamorous navy dress that sparkled under the ceiling lights. She looked ready for a celebration, not a hearing. Her chin was high, and she stepped beside Jason as though she were already his wife in every sense. When the judge entered, the courtroom rose. Everyone sat once he took his seat behind the large wooden bench. The prosecutor stood and began reading aloud the accusations against Jason. His voice echoed across the room with clarity. He spoke about Jason's emotional cruelty. He described the night of the birthday party. He described the fall that could have harmed both Maya and her unborn child. He outlined Jason's neglect. Each sentence carved itself into the silence of the room. Maya listened, her hand still pressed against her stomach, letting every word affirm the truth she had survived. The prosecutor approached the center of the room and asked the technician to play the video. The lights dimmed slightly. The screen flickered to life. The footage of Jason kneeling in front of Brooke appeared for all to see. The camera angle widened and revealed Maya standing only a few feet behind them. The room was so quiet that the faint sound from the speakers echoed like thunder. When Maya fell, gasps erupted throughout the courtroom. Several older women covered their mouths. One elderly man shook his head in disgust. A woman near the back began to cry softly. Maya heard a sniffle from the bench behind her. She turned slightly and saw a woman in her 70s wiping tears from her cheeks. The woman whispered, "No mother should ever be treated like that." Maya looked down briefly, moved by the compassion surrounding her. When the lights came back on, Jason's attorney stood quickly. He attempted to soften the image by claiming Jason had acted out of temporary emotional confusion. He insisted Jason had not understood Maya's distress and had been caught up in the excitement of the moment. His explanation fell flat. It did not match what everyone had clearly seen with their own eyes. Brooke took the stand after him. She brushed her hair behind her shoulder and spoke with exaggerated confidence. She claimed Maya had pushed her first, implying that Brooke had only reacted defensively. But when the prosecutor replayed the footage from a different angle, the truth became undeniable. The camera showed Brooke standing calmly beside Jason, with no contact from Maya. It was clear that Brooke had lied. Doctors were called to testify next. They explained how stress and emotional trauma could seriously endanger pregnancy. They confirmed that Maya's condition had worsened the night of the incident. The room shifted again. Sympathy for Maya grew even stronger. Judgments about Jason hardened. Benjamin, Maya's attorney, rose from his seat and carried a folder to the center. He opened it and began laying out the printed messages recovered from Brooke's phone. The pages held lines of flirtation, planning, and manipulation. The courtroom watched as Jason's expression changed. His jaw tensed, his eyes narrowed, his polished confidence cracked. He had not expected the messages to resurface. He had relied too heavily on Brooke's attempt to erase them. Outside the courthouse, the crowd began chanting again. Their voices filtered faintly through the closed doors, rising with the momentum of the case. Justice for Maya. Stand with mothers. The chants grew louder with every new piece of evidence presented. Some of the spectators inside smiled at the sound. Brooke started trembling on the witness stand. She tried to maintain composure, but her hands shook when she reached for her water glass. The prosecutor's questions grew sharper. Her responses grew weaker. The pressure of the truth pressed down on her like a weight she could not withstand. Jason looked beside him and saw her unraveling. For the first time, fear flickered across his face. He realized that everything was slipping beyond his control. No amount of money or influence could contain what had been unleashed in this courtroom. Finally, the judge called Maya to the stand. She rose slowly, supported once again by Samuel. She placed her hand gently on the rail and looked directly at the judge. Her voice was soft, but the strength behind it filled the room. "I do not want revenge," she said clearly. "I only want to be treated with respect, as a person, as a mother, as someone who tried to build a family." The courtroom fell into complete silence. Even the shuffle of papers stopped. For several seconds, it felt like the entire building held one single breath. The judge looked at her, then glanced at Jason. He closed the file on his desk and spoke solemnly. "The court will deliver its decision tomorrow." The room erupted into murmurs, but Maya remained still. The day was not done yet, but she had spoken her truth. Samuel wrapped an arm around her shoulders as they left the stand. The battle was not over. But Maya no longer felt alone. The drive back to the hospital was quiet. Snow flurries drifted through the Denver air as Samuel guided Maya slowly through the entrance of the maternity wing. The courthouse crowds and the weight of the long hearing still clung to her shoulders like a heavy coat. When she finally returned to her room, she lowered herself carefully onto the bed. The soft hum of the monitors wrapped the space in a gentle rhythm. A nurse checked her vitals and reminded her to rest. Maya nodded. She knew her body needed calm. She knew her baby needed it even more. Samuel pulled a chair next to her bed and sat down. He leaned back slightly, crossing his arms, but his eyes remained on her with quiet vigilance. He would not leave her side tonight. Not when tomorrow held the power to change everything. He slipped off his coat and placed it over the foot of the bed to keep close. As the hospital settled into its nighttime stillness, Maya lay on her side. The soft glow from the window pushed a faint silver line across the room. She breathed slowly. Then she felt it. A small movement beneath her hand. Her baby gave a gentle kick, light but unmistakable. The touch startled her for a moment, then warmed her from the inside out. It was as if the tiny life within her was reminding her to stay strong, to hold on, to keep fighting. She placed both hands over her belly and whispered, "Thank you." The warmth spread across her chest. The pain of the courtroom, the fear of the unknown, the exhaustion of standing through hours of testimony, all eased for a moment. Across the city, Brooke was staring at her reflection in a bathroom mirror. Her hands were shaking, her eyes were swollen. The glamorous navy dress she had worn to court still hung on her shoulders, but it no longer made her feel powerful. The day's events had broken the illusion she once depended on. She replayed every moment in her mind, the gasps in the courtroom, the way the judge looked at Jason, the damning evidence. She feared losing Jason. She feared losing whatever identity she had claimed through him. Most of all, she feared everyone learning the truth. Her phone buzzed sharply. She reached for it with trembling fingers. Jason's name glowed across the screen. When she answered, his voice hit her like a slap. "You should have kept your mouth shut," he snarled. "All you had to do was stay calm," she stuttered. "Jason, I tried. I really tried. They kept. You made me look weak," he snapped. "You should have handled yourself better." The call ended before she could respond. She lowered the phone slowly. Tears rolled down her cheeks. For the first time since the affair began, she saw the man she had chosen clearly. Not charming, not generous, not loving. She saw cruelty. She saw selfishness. She saw a man who could discard anyone the moment they stopped benefiting him. In the hospital room, Maya stared out the window at the glow of the city. Lights flickered across buildings and streets like little fragments of the life she once imagined. A home with warmth. A peaceful marriage. A child growing in safety. She thought of the evenings when she believed Jason would be a father who read bedtime stories and held her hand during ultrasounds. She mourned the dream of a healthy family that she had fought to protect for so long. "Dad," she whispered softly. Samuel leaned forward. "I am right here, sweetheart." "I am scared," she said. Her voice was barely a breath. She did not cry. She simply stated the truth, a truth she had carried silently for months. Fear of losing her baby, fear of losing her dignity, fear of losing the future she had tried to build. Samuel reached out and held her hand. His palm was rough and warm. "You have been strong from the beginning," he said. "You have walked through fire and you have not fallen apart. You are here. You are fighting. That is strength, Maya." His words settled deeply in her heart. She blinked slowly, letting the comfort wash over her. Moments later, her phone buzzed with a soft notification, then another, and another. When she picked it up, she saw dozens of messages lighting the screen. Encouragement, prayers, stories from mothers and grandmothers across the country. People who had followed her case. People who believed her. People who saw her strength. One message stood out. It was from a retired schoolteacher in Nebraska. The woman had written in neat, heartfelt sentences, "You deserve to be loved, dear child. No one deserves what you went through. Keep your chin up. You are not alone." Maya's throat tightened. She scrolled through more messages, each one touching her tired heart. She felt warmth begin to fill the hollow places left by Jason's betrayal. She realized something important. She was not just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for her baby, for a life free from fear, for a home filled with real love. The realization strengthened her. Across town, Jason sat alone in his office with a half-empty glass of whiskey in front of him. The polished wood desk reflected the city lights outside. His eyes were glassy, his jaw stiff. He drank again and again, trying to drown the anger, trying to silence the sinking feeling that tomorrow might not go his way. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration and muttered curses under his breath. He slammed the glass down, but the sound did not ease the tension. It only reminded him that he was losing control. Brooke, meanwhile, packed her bags in silence. She knew she could not stay. Not with the evidence exposed, not with Jason's anger aimed at her. She slipped clothes into a suitcase, her hands trembling. Fear sat heavy in her chest. She wanted to disappear before everything crumbled further. Back at the hospital, the company spokesperson contacted Jason and insisted he prepare a public apology. The scandal was growing, and the business was suffering. Jason refused. "No judge will ever rule against me," he said confidently. "I am Jason Hale. I do not lose." He hung up the phone with a harsh click. Outside, a winter storm swept across Denver. Snow whipped through the streets. Wind moaned against buildings. The temperature dropped sharply, and the city lights blurred behind swirling flakes. The storm felt like a warning, a sign that everything was about to shift. Inside her warm room, Maya placed her hand over her belly once more. The baby moved gently beneath her touch. She whispered, "Tomorrow, we will be free." Samuel leaned back, finally allowing himself to rest. The storm howled outside, its voice long and haunting. The room dimmed into soft shadows as Maya closed her eyes. The night before the verdict came to an end, with the sound of the winter wind echoing through the hospital window, and in that sound rested both fear and hope. The sun had barely risen when the crowd began gathering outside the Denver County Courthouse. A thin layer of frost clung to the railings, and the breath of early morning air hovered like mist above the stone steps. Yet, the cold did not stop them. Dozens of older residents arrived, dressed in coats, scarves, and gloves. Many carried handmade signs. Some read, "Justice for Maya." Others said, "Protect mothers," or "Stand with her." Their presence filled the entrance with a sense of quiet dignity, a collective force ready to witness the final chapter of a painful story. Inside the courthouse, security guided the crowd into the building. The benches filled rapidly. The older citizens in attendance spoke in soft voices, murmuring prayers and words of encouragement. They had followed Maya's story from the moment the video leaked. They had been outraged by the betrayal. They had arrived determined to show support until the very end. Maya entered through the side hallway, walking carefully beside her father and her attorney, Benjamin Carter. Her steps were slow and deliberate. She kept a protective hand on her belly as she moved. Samuel remained close, one arm around her shoulders, guiding her through the crowded hallway. He nodded gratefully to those who whispered words like, "Stay strong," and "We believe you." Maya felt her chest tighten with emotion. She never imagined strangers would stand with her this way. The courtroom fell quiet when they entered. As she took her seat, she could feel the weight of every gaze. Not judgmental, not accusatory, supportive. The silence carried warmth and gravity. Jason arrived a moment later. His appearance startled many in the room. His eyes were swollen and bloodshot. His hair was disheveled, and the crisp lines of his expensive suit could not hide the exhaustion in his posture. He clearly had not slept. The smell of stale alcohol clung faintly to him when he passed by. His attempt at confidence had cracked. He looked nervous, irritable, and deeply shaken. Beside him, the seat reserved for Brooke remained empty. It caught everyone's attention. People whispered. No one knew where she was. No one had seen her. Her absence cast a shadow over the courtroom. When the judge entered, the room rose to its feet. The sound of chairs shifting against the floor echoed for several seconds, then faded into complete silence. The judge adjusted his glasses and looked over the courtroom with a stern expression. His presence alone demanded order. The prosecutor stepped forward first. He reviewed the case with calm precision, summarizing Jason's actions without embellishment. He spoke of the betrayal at the birthday party. He described Jason's indifference while Maya was injured. He described the emotional trauma and the dangerous stress inflicted on a pregnant woman. Each sentence fell like a stone into still water. Benjamin followed. His voice was steady and clear as he outlined Maya's suffering. He explained the psychological consequences in detail. He presented medical reports that documented the stress-induced risks to the baby. He reminded the court of the video footage. He reminded them of the public humiliation she endured. When he finished, Maya felt Samuel squeeze her hand. She held on to the strength of that touch. Jason attempted to stand when the judge looked in his direction, as if preparing to defend himself. The judge lifted a hand with authority. "Sit down," he said, firmly. The words cut through the air. Jason obeyed. His face tightened with frustration. His attorney placed a hand on his arm to keep him calm. The judge turned to the clerk. "Confirm the evidence." "Well." The clerk read aloud the legality of the video footage, the authentication process, and the chain of custody. Everything was confirmed. Every piece of evidence remained intact, verified, and admissible. When the clerk finished, the judge nodded. This court recognizes the events of the night as accurately represented. The room shifted with a wave of anticipation. The judge looked down at his papers. "This marriage," he said, pausing briefly, "was treated like a joke, a living partnership reduced to a spectacle, a family disregarded for entertainment." Maya lowered her head and wrapped both hands around her belly. The baby moved softly beneath her palm, reminding her that she was not alone. Her breath trembled. This was the moment that would shape her future. She closed her eyes for a second, gathering strength. The judge continued, "Maya Thompson, you have demonstrated resilience under extreme emotional harm. You have shown dignity and restraint. The court acknowledges the psychological damage inflicted upon you." A hush fell over the room. He lifted his gaze toward Jason. "Jason Hale, the court finds you guilty of inflicting emotional harm on a pregnant woman. Your actions were reckless. Your disregard for your wife's safety placed both her and her unborn child at unacceptable risk." Jason's face drained of color. He blinked rapidly, unable to believe what he was hearing. His lips parted slightly, but no words came out. He looked around the courtroom as if hoping for someone to defend him. No one moved. A soft cry escaped Maya. Relief washed through her like a warm tide. Samuel placed an arm around her shoulders, supporting her gently. Her tears flowed, but they were tears of release, not pain. Benjamin placed a reassuring hand on her back as the judge continued reading. "In addition to this ruling, custody of the unborn child will be granted to Maya Thompson. Jason Hale will have limited visitation under supervision only, contingent upon counseling and psychological evaluation." The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder. Security stepped forward to quiet the crowd, but their efforts could not completely suppress the emotional response. Outside, the chants of the supporters filtered through the windows again. "Justice for Maya, protect mothers, let truth win." Inside, the room erupted in applause. The judge struck his gavel once and reminded everyone to remain orderly. But the applause came again, softer this time, from those too moved to contain it. Jason stared ahead with a stunned expression. He looked smaller somehow, defeated. The arrogance he carried for so long had dissolved in the weight of the ruling. The clerk approached the judge, and the paperwork was signed. The verdict was official. Maya lifted her chin, still trembling from the release of months of fear and pain. She turned slowly toward her father. Her eyes glistened with gratitude. She whispered, "I won." Samuel brushed a tear from her cheek. "You did," he said quietly. "But you never fought alone." Maya looked down at her belly, then back at her father, knowing he was right. She had survived because she was loved, because she was believed, because she had a reason to keep fighting. The judge's final statement echoed in her mind. Maya deserves to live in safety and respect. A bestows. The words felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. Maya stood with Samuel's help. Together they walked toward the exit, surrounded by a crowd of people who had waited for this moment. She felt lighter with every step she took. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but today, justice had finally spoken. Jason stared at the glowing numbers on the financial report, unable to blink. The stock value of Hale Corporation had dropped another 8% overnight. Added to the collapse earlier in the week, his company had now lost almost 70% of its total value. The sharp decline cut across every department, every subsidiary, every investment. Analysts on major networks called it one of the fastest moral collapses of a public figure in recent years. The headlines repeated themselves over and over on his phone. Massive sell-off hits Hale Corporation. Investors panic after scandal. Moral failure leads to corporate downfall. Jason clenched his jaw, but nothing stopped the spiral. His empire was collapsing, and he knew it. The first partnership withdrawal came early that morning. A long-term affiliate that had worked with him for over a decade sent a brief email announcing that they were terminating all future agreements. Within hours, 3 more partners issued similar statements. They cited loss of trust, questionable ethics, and public pressure. Jason read each message as if they were knives pressed slowly into his skin. The humiliation stung more than the financial loss. He had built his brand on an image of success, stability, and polished perfection. Now every part of it was in ruins. The media sharpened their tone. Morning shows and evening debates questioned his character, his choices, and even his understanding of basic decency. One commentator called him the new symbol of America's moral decline. Another said, "If this is leadership, no wonder people are losing faith." The words burned. They were broadcast across the nation, replayed by thousands of viewers, shared widely on social media. Jason felt exposed in a way he never had before. Brooke was suffering too. Her attempt to find new employment failed miserably. When she submitted her resume to a competitive firm downtown, the hiring team recognized her immediately. Not from her credentials, from the scandal. Her name had become tied to betrayal. By midweek, she received notice from several places she had applied to. They all declined her application. She had become a liability. She sat on the edge of her bed and stared at the rejection emails, her hands trembling. Her glamorous life, once filled with parties and smiles, had shrunk into a corner of shame. At the penthouse, silence grew heavy. Jason refused to speak to her. He avoided eye contact, avoided conversation, avoided any acknowledgement that she lived under the same roof. Each time she tried to approach him, he moved away like her presence disgusted him. One night, during a heated moment, Jason finally snapped. "You ruined my life," he shouted. "If you had behaved yourself, none of this would have happened." Brooke stared at him in disbelief. "You were the one who proposed in front of your pregnant wife. You were the one who lied. I only followed you." Jason's voice rose even louder. "You destroyed everything. Everything." The argument spiraled into chaos. Words were thrown like stones. Each accusation hit a deeper part of the life they had built on deception. By the time the fight ended, Brooke grabbed her purse and stormed out. She did not look back. Jason watched the door slam behind her. He expected relief. Instead, he felt something cold bloom in the center of his chest. Silence filled the room, heavy, suffocating. For the first time in months, he felt completely alone. Outside the penthouse, America reacted differently. People rallied around Maya, especially older adults. Community centers, church groups, advocacy programs, and senior associations spoke openly about her resilience. Many Americans over 60 saw her as a symbol of grace under pressure. Her story reminded them of traditional values, of the importance of family, loyalty, and responsibility. Letters poured in from across the country. Prayers were sent. Encouragement flowed. Several nonprofit organizations reached out privately, offering support to Maya as a single mother. They admired her composure, her dignity, and her ability to speak with calm strength in the midst of humiliation. One organization promised legal support. Another offered mental health services. A third promised help with baby essentials. Their generosity surprised Maya, but she accepted it with gratitude. When Maya appeared on a morning television segment, millions tuned in. She spoke softly, carefully choosing her words. She did not attack Jason. She did not speak in anger. Instead, she shared the truth with steady honesty. She spoke about fear. She spoke about strength. She spoke about the baby she was determined to protect. Viewers across the country were moved. Many cried. Older women in particular related to her pain. They saw their younger selves in her. Women who had endured betrayal. Women who had been silenced. Women who had fought to keep their families safe. Meanwhile, Jason grew desperate. He attempted to schedule a public apology to salvage what little reputation he still had. But every network declined. They did not want to be associated with him. Even his PR team suggested he disappear from the spotlight for a while. When he tried to send an apology to Maya through a private email, she never responded. Maya's silence spoke loudest. She did not engage, she did not retaliate, she did not try to destroy him. She simply moved forward. Her heart no longer needed revenge, it needed freedom. Samuel helped her every step of the way. He refused to leave her side. He drove her to appointments. He helped her prepare for the baby. He made her meals when she was too tired to cook. His presence strengthened her as she found her footing again. Soon, Maya decided to move back to Wyoming. She wanted to raise her child near the mountains she grew up with. She wanted the quiet. She wanted the peace. Her father welcomed her home with open arms. Not long after, a non-profit group contacted her again. They had watched her interviews and admired her resilience. They offered to help her start a small business. They told her she had the strength to rebuild her life. She accepted their help and began to plan a new future. As the months passed, Maya's world slowly grew brighter. She built routines. She prepared a nursery. She took long walks on familiar trails. She began imagining a future filled with gentleness and hope. In Denver, Jason sat alone in the once luxurious penthouse. Brooke was gone. His family avoided him. His company had fallen. He stood by the window at night and stared at the city. The apartment felt empty. The silence pressed against him. His reflection in the glass looked hollow, lost. Regret settled across him like a shadow that would never leave. He realized too late what he had thrown away, and the world had stopped waiting for him. Maya, however, had already moved on. Her life was beginning again. Spring arrived quietly in Wyoming, painting the valleys with soft light and wide-open skies. Morning sunlight spilled across the horizon, revealing distant snowcaps melting into streams that threaded their way through the small mountain town. The air felt crisp, fresh, and gentler than anything Maya had breathed in months. For the first time in a long while, the world felt peaceful. She stepped out onto the small front porch of her new home and closed her eyes as the cool breeze brushed her cheeks. This was her new beginning. This was where she would rebuild. Her new house sat near the edge of the woods, close enough for her father to reach within minutes from his workplace. Samuel had insisted on helping her find a safe place, a home where she could recover, where she could feel supported, where her child would grow, surrounded by people who cared. The house was small, but filled with sunlight. Wooden beams stretched across the ceiling. The scent of pine drifted from the forest behind it, and inside, one room had already been transformed into a nursery. Maya spent the morning arranging the baby's room. She folded tiny clothes with slow, mindful movements. She placed a soft, cream-colored blanket over the crib. She stood by the window and pictured the life waiting for her child. Hope filled her eyes. The space felt warm, not because of the sunlight, but because she was finally preparing without fear. As her pregnancy became more visible, the neighbors began visiting. Many of them were older residents who had lived in Wyoming all their lives. They brought homemade quilts, knitted hats, and jars of soup. They greeted her with gentle voices and warm embraces. Their kindness seeped into her like light through a window. When one elderly woman handed her a pair of hand-stitched booties, Maya almost cried. She had grown so used to cruelty that kindness felt overwhelming. Samuel spent every free hour repairing and repainting the house. He patched the porch railing. He sanded the window frames. He checked the heater and fixed the squeaky door hinges. Each stroke of his paintbrush was a silent way of saying he loved her. When Maya stepped outside one afternoon and saw him covered in sawdust, she smiled softly. Seeing her father prepare their home made her feel grounded and safe. One afternoon, a group of senior women from the community knocked on her door. They introduced themselves with motherly smiles and asked if she would like help once the baby arrived. They offered to babysit. They offered to bring meals. They offered to be there when she needed a moment of rest. Maya invited them inside, touched by their sincerity. She felt tears rise when they told her she deserved support, especially as a single mother. On another morning, she attended a prenatal yoga class designed for single moms. The room was bright, with wide windows that looked toward the mountains. The soft music and gentle movements eased her breathing. As she stretched and strengthened her body, she felt herself healing emotionally too. Wyoming's calm atmosphere seeped into her bones. The chaos of her past slowly loosened its grip on her heart. The weeks passed with a soothing rhythm. Maya healed not only from stress, but from the deep emotional wounds Jason had left behind. Each morning felt like another stitch, repairing the fabric of her life. She walked through her neighborhood at sunrise, inhaling the clean air. She watched the sky turn from gray to gold. She listened to birdsong echo across the pines. Every moment reminded her that peace was possible. One quiet afternoon, as she stood in the kitchen preparing tea, she felt something different. A stronger movement, a powerful kick. She froze, her hand pressed against her belly. The baby fluttered again, stronger than ever before. She gasped and smiled with pure joy. "You are almost here," she whispered. "My little angel." She stepped outside and took a slow walk around the small forest path behind the house. The air was cool. The pine needles cushioned her footsteps. Sunlight filtered through the branches above. With each breath, she inhaled Wyoming's calm spirit. Her worries drifted away with the breeze. She thought of the journey she had survived. From the darkness of betrayal to the light of safety. Each step on the path felt symbolic, like she was walking out of her past and into her future. When she returned home, her father was waiting by the fence with a gentle smile. "You are stronger than I ever imagined," he said, his eyes soft with pride. Maya looked at him with gratitude. "I learned from you," she replied. The next morning dawned even more peacefully. The house felt warm, the world felt still. But that calm broke when a sudden sharp cry echoed through the room. Maya's breath hitched. The moment had finally arrived. Hours later, the hospital room filled with the tiny wails of a newborn. A nurse gently wrapped the baby in a soft blanket and placed her into Maya's arms. A girl. A strong, healthy baby girl. Tears blurred Maya's vision. Her body trembled with relief as she held her daughter close. Samuel stood beside her, both hands covering his mouth as emotion overtook him. He had fought for his daughter. Now he watched her become a mother herself. He cried openly, unable to contain the joy that spread across his chest. Maya brushed her cheek against the baby's forehead. She felt warmth radiating from the tiny body. She felt love swelling inside her, stronger than anything she had ever known. Later, as the hospital quieted and the first light of dawn began glowing through the window, Maya stood slowly and approached the glass. The sky was turning soft shades of rose and gold. She held her daughter in her arms, rocking gently as the new day broke. The world outside looked brighter than ever. Clean, full of promise. She whispered, almost too softly for anyone to hear. "Justice is not only punishing the bad. Justice is giving yourself a new beginning." End quote. Her daughter stirred in her arms as if agreeing. The past had closed. A new dawn had arrived. And Maya stepped into it with hope.